All right, well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Castellani Art Museum. I am the director of the museum, Ellen Owens. Thank you for joining us for part 2 of this lecture series, AI as a Medium. Niagara University and the Castellani Art Museum acknowledge that we are privileged to gather on the lands of the Seneca and Tuscarora nations and other indigenous communities who have stewarded and continue to steward this land throughout generations. We honor their sovereignty, demonstrate respect, and correct the stories and practices that have erased indigenous people's history and culture in the past and present by inviting and honoring truth. CAM lives this acknowledgement daily through our commitment to showcasing Indigenous perspectives in its galleries and programs. Today's program is part of partnership with Niagara University's International Marketing MKT 325, and this will culminate with a pop-up exhibition of student creative work right here in the museum on April 29th. I'd like to also welcome principals of leadership, I believe, that is here today. So everybody, please feel like this museum is a space for you. We are open to the public 5 days a week, but we're open to the campus 7 days a week. So anytime during business hours during the week, you should be able to come and visit us. And also Wednesday through Sunday, we are open to the public. So we welcome you, your friends, and your family, and we are free. Today, we are privileged to host two very distinguished speakers in this area, Sebastian Sanchez and Michael Spalter. To introduce them, here is Jess Minicucci, CAM's Membership and Marketing Specialist.
Thank you so much, Ellen. And hello, everyone. It's great to see you again today, and some of you new faces, thank you for coming. As Ellen mentioned, this is the second and final installment of our AI lecture series at CAM. Today we're focusing on AI in the art market. Our speakers will guide us through the intricate world of digital art and its market dynamics, particularly emphasizing the role of artificial intelligence. Sebastian Sanchez, the manager of digital art sales at Christie's, brings a wealth of experience from his groundbreaking collaborations with Beeple and Gucci, as well as his prior leadership in Web3 projects with major brands. Co-founding the generative art platform ARTXCODE, Sebastian has played a pivotal role in shaping the generative art market. His diverse background, coupled with his expertise as a full-stack engineer and a degree in design management, offers a comprehensive view of the digital art world. Joining us is Michael Spalter, the former chairman of the board of the Rhode Island School of Design, Christie, whose vast experience in the art and education sectors, including roles with the American Friends of the Louvre and Harvard's University Cultural Entrepreneurship Initiative, provides a unique perspective on digital art from an institutional standpoint. He is also the co-founder of Spalter Digital, one of the world's largest private collections of early computer art, comprising over 1,000 works from the second half of the 20th century. This lecture offers students and listeners valuable learning outcomes. You will understand the career paths of our speakers in the digital art field. You'll grasp the value and dynamics of the digital art market. You'll gain knowledge about what collectors seek in digital and AI art, and you'll receive practical advice for aspiring collectors and professionals in the digital art arena. So join us for this enriching and informative session, pivotal for our international marketing students at Niagara University as they embark on their journey to create AI-generated art inspired by our museum's collection. We look forward to sharing this journey with you. We would like to extend a huge thank you to Dr. Daly, the participating students, the CAM staff, and the College of Business for making this important conversation possible. Please note that we are recording this session, and please make sure to take notes and write down questions for our speakers. We'll hold a 10-minute Q&A session at the end of our lectures. Thank you so much, and I'm going to pass the screen over to our first speaker, Sebastian Sanchez. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, everyone, so much. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. Thank you, Jessica, for the lovely intro. Thank you, Cam and Niagara University. I'm very excited to speak with all of you today. I will share my screen so you guys can see my presentation. Let me know if you can see this.
You can see it.
Great. So I'm here to talk to you today about what it's like to be a digital art specialist, a little bit about my journey, a little bit about the current state of the digital art market, specifically AI and other major categories within the digital art market. So I'd love to start this off by defining digital art. So digital art is defined as work made and or presented using digital methods and media. A great definition of it was written by Christian Paul, the adjunct curator of digital art at the Whitney Museum in New York City. So it explores digital technologies as a medium by making use of its key features such as real-time, interactive, participatory, generative, and variable characteristics, or by reflecting upon the nature and impact of digital technologies. Digital art may seem like a new category, but really it's been around for decades, and I know Michael will be speaking to that. He's been a pioneer collecting digital art for many, many, many decades and years, and has really sort of has a collection that shows how historical this category is. But just because we're living in the very technological era right now, it may seem like it's all new, but it's really not. NFTs and the blockchain recently, I feel like, put the spotlight on digital art. I think that's why there's been this new attention towards it. NFTs really allow for digital art to move freely and be traded in its native format, which is quite different than anything that's been able to have been done in the past. So in a way, they're amazing, but also they became so mainstream in 2021 and caused a lot of unrealistic market speculation, which led to sort of a bit of a crash for 2 years. I think what I'll show in this presentation is where the market's at today. And, I think compared to the last 2 years, it's in a really great spot right now. I think, there's amazing projects being made. There is attention to history. There is, so it's sort of like we're watching the unfolding of technology before our eyes and the creative response to the technology. So it's really, really fascinating what is happening. So the digital art market today, the media is sort of against us at all times. This is what we see in the media. NFTs are worthless. NFTs are dead. Digital art is dead. No highlight of, the actual creative artists and breakthroughs that are happening, honestly, like every month in this space, which again, I'll highlight. This is what it really looks like. The market is thriving right now. Just this week, there was a $16 million sale for a CryptoPunk. A CryptoPunk is a collection from 2017. It was very avant-garde at the time and is now in the museum collections across the world, such as LACMA, such as the Pompidou in Paris. It's in really amazing collections. And also by the same artist this week or last week, there was a $15 million sale for a set of autoglyphs, which is what you see on the right. So when we see headlines that NFTs are dead and worthless, no one is really paying attention to what's actually happening. Some other highlights, just again, in the past week, at a major auction house on the left, a piece of generative art sold for $241,000. On the right, just on the open market, $1.8 million sale and a $1.1 million sale. So NFTs are definitely not dead. Digital art is thriving. There are incredible artistic projects happening, which I will walk you through some of them. So these are, I would say, the top categories in digital art. This can be broken out into many subcategories, but just for lack of better definitions, there's the PFPs, which are profile pictures, which are really defined as like avatars. And they were sort of the first category within digital art that really took off. Some examples are CryptoPunks, as I just referenced, but they're very widely adopted because of this idea of identity on the internet. A lot of people put these profile pictures as their Instagram avatars or Twitter profile pictures, and they really identify themselves with these. So it's quite an easy category to adopt for the masses, and a lot of times it commands high prices. I would say this is like sometimes could be more collectible versus like fine art, but the lines are really blurred within the entire digital art space. So you could really argue that it's all art. Then there's generative art, which is usually code-based art. or yeah, like made with algorithms. And the same way you would make a website, you can make art out of, essentially. So some examples of two very important pieces of generative art are below the circle that says generative art, by artists Tyler Hobbs and Dmitri Cherniak. Again, these are made entirely with code, usually like a form of JavaScript, and then the code is actually stored on the blockchain. So everything is sort of like just completely on the blockchain. And we can get into that later. That's a little bit technical. And then there's one-of-one art, which is really just, I would say, digital painters, digital illustrators, people like sort of either using a hand or like a digital paintbrush or canvas to make digital art. Some examples of artists are ARTXCODE, which is known for his glitch art style. So the piece on the right, below one-of-one art, is sort of this like glitch style art. And again, it's very digital. I would say it's more street art if you want to like put it in a broader context. And then there's an artist, Sam Spratt, which is the ape that you see on the right. He is a digital painter. His brush strokes are incredible. If you zoom in, it's like a literal painting. It's just made digitally. So you can really argue this is just an extension of regular contemporary art, but it really has its own, like this industry really has its own dynamics and way of working that is quite unique. This year and recently, we're seeing a big rise in AI art being popular. So this has many different definitions and has its own history of like how AI art has evolved, and which I'll walk through. So again, it's increasingly gaining market attention. I think this is just my opinion, but I think due to the fact that the technology is rapidly evolving and really solidifying within popular culture. We see AI being talked about in politics, on the news, you name it, what industry, AI is absolutely causing an impact in these industries. So just by nature, the creative and art around it is also it's happening and very important right now. We're watching AI evolve before our eyes, and we're watching artists harnessing the power of AI again before our eyes. So I've been around this space and working with AI artists since 2018, and what was capable then is miles away than what's capable now. And again, I'll show you some of this history. So these are some examples of artists working with AI that I think are super important right now and in the historical context. One is, he's almost like a scientist versus an artist, but Elman Mansimov created this project called Align Draw in 2015, and it's essentially credited as the first text-to-image model. So I'm sure you guys have worked with ChatGPT or have heard of DALL-E, where you type in like a horse walking down a street and you'll get a picture of a horse on the street. And right now what you get is very realistic. But obviously that concept had to start somewhere, and this was the first scientific project to ever really like produce visual results from a text prompt that was submitted to a scientific board for an actual proof of concept. So again, it's called Align Draw. It was made in 2015. Elman Mansimov is a researcher and scientist, but essentially created this form of historical like visual art. And in 2023, the company Fellowship brought this sort of collection of images to market. And there's 2,700 of these individual images, and they were sold at about $200 each, and it sold out within an hour. Christie's, I work at Christie's auction house, and we had the honor of selling a set of these. So as you can see on the bottom left, the text prompt was, "A stop sign is flying in blue skies." And what comes out of that text prompt is like this blurry red blob flying, like looking like it's in the middle of the sky, which again is super funny to think about. But if you use the technology now, you can see how advanced it is. So this was, again, the first time it was ever possible to make an image out of text. The market reacted really well to this piece. It sold for $33,000 US, and this was in December. And then following this sale, the collection of 2,700 pieces were sold on the open market. Here are some examples on the right of other text prompts, like a brown horse is grazing in a field. And you sort of just see this brown thing floating in the distance. A picture of the dark sky. which is, again, very interesting. Could be a star, could be a satellite. I think this one's quite good. An airplane flying off into the distance on a clear day. I think it looks like a airplane somewhat. But yeah, the project has actually recently gained a lot of attention. There's 2,700 individual squares with individual prompts, and each one of them right now is going for $5,000, and they're being traded constantly every day in the open market. So I think the digital art market is turning itself on a lot to AI art at the moment, which is, again, very exciting. Another artist and project that I wanted to highlight was the artist Robbie Barrett. So he worked at NVIDIA, and he is a very prolific coder and software engineer. He was working with early form of AI, again, after a line draw, but sort of before what we're at. In 2017, he was working with GANs, which are basically like custom-made neural networks where you feed thousands of images of something and then it spits out this sort of like other image, similar to writing a text prompt where you write, a horse walking down a street, but custom made by the artist. So obviously very technical at the time. I think 2017, the usability of this technology was very like, you needed to be skilled to use it, whereas now anyone can log on, and that's really exciting. But this artist, specifically in this project, created his own neural network, so its own AI model. And what he did was input thousands of nude portraits from history. So from like open domain, wiki art, he downloaded thousands of nude portraits that were painted in history, put them through his custom-made AI model, and what came out was something that does not look like a nude at all. It actually looks like a blobby piece of flesh. And there's 300 of these unique works within this series. And as you can see, they command very high prices. They have sold for upwards of like $800,000 US. They don't sell often because there's so few of them, but when they do, they sell for very high prices. And I'll get into this a bit later because Christie's has a big role in this project specifically. So I'll talk about that in a sec. Another artist I wanted to highlight was Helena Sarin. I have personally been working with her since 2018. She is a visual artist, a maker, and a software engineer. Again, she's sort of part of this old school of AI artists where they sort of crafted and coded their own algorithms by themselves. So what Helena does is really, she hand draws, for example, if you can see this flowers in a vase, she hand draws this, vase, still life of flowers, and she either takes photos of it or scans it and runs them through her own AI model. And what comes out of that is, this sort of like black, white, red AI sort of meshed version of a hand drawing. So I would say this is sort of an old school way of working with AI, whereas now you can work a lot with just text prompts. Helena Sarin is a very skilled software engineer. So again, like back in the day, you had to be very like skillful in engineering to work with AI, whereas now it's so commonly available that, the barrier to entry is way less. But she's a very important artist who, again, commands very high market prices. She just sold, a month ago, a work for $70,000. So I would say this is entering the new era of AI artists who work with a lot of like text prompts. And now that the technology has evolved so much, it's a lot easier. So this is Rupe Reinisto. He is a Finnish artist. His collection that's gained a lot of market attention is called Life in West America. It's basically a collection of 500 like post photographs is what they call it, or like photorealism AI. As you can see here, this is like a car on fire, but not on fire. And what he's done is essentially like work with a private text to image prompt model and feed it photographs of America in the 60s, 70s, and then craft his own sort of curated collection of photographic outputs. And there's 500 pieces in the collection. Each piece sells for about like $15,000 at the moment. So just you can just put the numbers together. I mean, the total ETH volume that has been traded in this collection is like, I don't know, $10 million, which is crazy to think about. And another important artist who I love is Claire Silver. She is considers herself an AI collaborative artist because she really works with AI as a collaboration to refine her work. There are two images that I added here. The image on the left is from her collection from 2021. And then her image on the right is from her collection from 2024. So you can just see by these two images the advancement of AI and the possibilities within 3 years. So on the left, it's sort of like blurry, you can't really make something out. It kind of looked like textiles, but it's not, you're not sure. Whereas on the right, there's an entire like fashion garment with a real face and like real lace, tech lace clothing on them. So, amazing to see the difference and amazing to see I've seen this artist progress and with the technology that's available. So I find that to be really fascinating to see that in real time. This artist just released a collection of 500 works and it sold out within like a minute and generated $1.1 million within like 5 minutes of dropping. So again, this is definitely a market that is here to stay. And, again, it's linked to technology, which is really fascinating. Yeah. And it's not just the market that is recognizing digital blockchain and AI art, it's really institutions as well, which is very important in this context. So MoMA just acquired their first NFT, but also their first AI artwork. So by Rafiq Anadol. I don't know if any of you had the chance to come to New York City in the past year, but in the lobby, there was a huge installation with a massive screen. Basically, Rafiq Anadol was able to go into MoMA's archives, put all the works from the collection and history of MoMA, put them through his AI model, and then it was hallucinating sort of these beautiful digital paintings where the pigments are like data from the collection. They're really called data paintings. If you don't know Rafiq Anadol, highly recommend checking him out. He's a very like universal artist. He does amazing installations. And again, first NFT and AI work that MoMA has acquired. LACMA in Los Angeles last year acquired, I think, like 20 blockchain-based artworks. Some were made with AI, some were made with code, some were like digital paintings. So again, here's another example of institutions collecting and adopting digital art. The Pompidou last year in Paris also acquired 18 NFTs, some of which were made with generative code-based art. Some were just like digital art, video and things like that. The M+ Museum in China recently hosted a solo exhibition by Beeple and had this super cool digital sculpture that rotates in the middle of the room. And it's on view right now, but in London, Serpentine Galleries has a solo exhibition by Rafiq Anadol as well. So again, galleries, institutions, they're adopting it left and right. I think, there are some questions to be answered, but I think the museums are really paving the way here as well for what it could look like as an install and really collecting this type of new form of art. And there's also auction houses that have played a big role in the digital art market. On one hand, auction houses can be seen as sort of the antithesis of the digital art market. The digital art market is an open, decentralized, permissionless way to transact and buy art, whereas the traditional art world, it's common practice to go to an auction house. In the digital art world, you can literally just go online and buy whatever you want at whatever point in time, whenever you want. So auction houses are a little bit like against what it means to be decentralized. But on the other hand, we have a rich history in paving the way for the digital art market, which I'll show you. So I would say there's like an early period of 2018 to 2021 where the digital art market was forming into what it is today. And I think a huge key factor to that is the Christie's Art and Tech Summit. So it's a conference essentially that happens once a year or maybe twice a year in different cities. And we convene the brightest minds in art and tech. And every year is a different theme. So for example, in 2018, we were talking about the blockchain, which is, again, if you think about it at the time, NFTs were not mainstream. It was very underground. It was not really talked about a lot at all. But we were talking about it in this major stage with, major people who were attending. In 2018, on the topic of blockchain, this project that I mentioned earlier, the Lost Robbies, was actually given away for free at the Christie's Art and Tech Summit as on a gift card, essentially, with like a scratch off that you could like claim this NFT. And no one cared about it. Everyone threw all of these artworks away. There were 300 given out and only 6 were claimed. And the rest are considered lost. So there's sort of like this myth around this artwork because 260 of them are lost and only 30 of them were claimed at the time. And now only 30 of them are really available because the rest are sort of sealed and locked away in a smart contract. So they're inaccessible and only 36 of them are available. And again, that's why they're called the Lost Robbies, because most of them are presumed to have been thrown away. But it really goes to show the attitude towards digital art in 2018. There's been countless editorials written about the Lost Robbies. I highly recommend checking it out. In 2019 was all about AI. So again, very early on, it goes to show that we were trying to talk about this and have really been at the forefront of talking about these art and tech topics since very early on. In 2018, we sold our first AI generated artwork. The estimate was 7,000 to 10,000, and it shattered the estimates and sold for $430,000. I think this was like clear indication that this is a category in the art market that is very important, or was going to be very important. Here are some headlines in the New York Times and ArtNet. This was the first NFT Christie's ever sold in 2020 by an artist called Robert Alice, who we're actually about to work with again, which is exciting. But it's essentially a painting that came with like a key that had an NFT. So this was like a physical digital mix of art. But again, the estimate was 12 to 18,000 US, and it sold for 131. So you can clearly see appetite forming, before the Big Bang, which is what I like to call it, in March 2021. So this piece is by an artist named Beeple. Beeple has been a digital artist since the 90s. He's been practicing for decades already. He worked with a lot of DJs doing like background, visuals for, music concerts. And then he really branched off and started doing his own art. And he was very early on to the digital art scene and NFT scene. And we got an opportunity to sell this work called The First 5,000 Days. So what the artist did was make an artwork for 5,000 days, essentially. And this artwork is a collage of every single one of those daily artworks. So essentially the buyer is getting 5,000 artworks. But this is the first digital-only NFT, like the only first digital art Christie's ever sold that did not have a physical. It was strictly an NFT. And this is the piece that like started, I would say, the market in how we know it today. I think the estimate was like $100 or maybe unknown, and it was placed in some random sale because people who worked here at the time didn't really know what this was going to be. And suddenly, within like 10 minutes, it reached $1 million, and everyone had to sort of scramble to figure out like what is going on. And lo and behold, within the week of this auction being up, it sold for $69 million. I think it's like the second highest artwork ever sold by an artist. So yeah, after this, every headline, every news was like, oh, what are NFTs? What's happening? And it was sold at Christie's. So obviously auction houses, again, have played a huge role in talking about these things, bringing them to market, showcasing them. I'm really taking risks and legitimizing this art. I mean, yeah, this speaks for itself. We've worked with the Warhol estate to revive artworks made by Andy Warhol in the 80s and have brought them to market. So we're not only working with contemporary artists, we've worked with artist estates to sort of like preserve and bring back artworks from the 80s and 90s into a way that is like safe and can be traded and can be moved and stored in a much better fashion with the technology that we have today than what was available back in the day. This piece is a AI artwork we sold by Rafik Anatol, who I mentioned earlier. This was sold in 2022. This was an interesting piece because it has a huge physical component. Essentially, this is a projection mapping on top of a Gaudi building in Barcelona. It's called Casa Batio, and Rafik essentially live mapped it using his AI digital paintings, and we sold this. It fell within estimate. I would say this was sort of like when the market started downturning, but obviously it still commanded $1.4 million in the time. And this is I showed some of these earlier, but Fidenza, it's a collection of 1,000 works. This is made with code entirely, so JavaScript, and this sold for 365 British pounds just last year. So we have adopted many different ways of selling art here at Christie's. We have even built our own sort of NFT platform that is powered by Ethereum, which is how you really buy digital art, contemporary digital art. And we partnered with Gucci to showcase artists who were working within the topic of fashion and generative art and AI. So a lot of it was text to image prompts that were like around fashion, photography, style. Some of the artists I mentioned, such as Helena Sarin, were part of this show, and I'll walk through some of the pieces. But yeah, this was a really exciting opportunity, and it was great. Here are some examples. So on the right, you see an AI generated photograph essentially, and what the artist does. She was inspired by fashion editorials and fashion photography, and it's really a study on black braided hair. So it's a series where it's all like a braid study, and it's really beautiful. But again, it has a sort of like fashiony element to it, which was appealing to Gucci as well. On the left hand side it's actually a still from a video, but it's by the artist Helena Sarin, who I mentioned earlier. And it's, again, her drawings, her watercolors, then spit through her like custom made AI model, and then it created this sort of collage video. As I mentioned, we worked with the Warhol estate to bring back works from the 80s. Keith Haring also did digital works in the 80s, which we preserved and restored. I would say we did the Keith Haring project a bit better in terms of preservation. The Warhol one was done in 2021. This one was done in 2023. And even since then, the technologies that are able to do in terms of preservation and storing artwork like on the blockchain have increased dramatically. So that was a little bit about the market. Just want to talk about me for a sec. So I'm the manager of digital art sales at Christie's Auction House. My role is anything digital art comes through my desk. We are a newly formed department. I am really the first official hire within the department. A lot of people who I work with were like brought in from other departments that have been Christie's for longer, but I was brought in for this role specifically, which is really exciting. So I have a lot of different like skill sets, which along the way, I really had no idea what I was doing, or maybe I did, but it didn't really make sense until now where I'm able to look back. So I'm a digital art specialist. I've done project management most of my career. I'm a certified software engineer. I'm a creative thinker, researcher, and art collector. So how did I get here? I graduated from Parsons Design School with a business degree, which again is quite different than what you would think about for Parsons. You would think somebody's in fashion designer, graphics designer. I studied business, so I studied managing creative projects, which really laid the foundation for my career. I'm managing creative projects left and right still. While I was at school, I interned at MoMA, at Christie's, at the Rubel Museum in Miami, and then at Artsy. So I was constantly working and really always trying to like get out there and get a job, really. After university, I worked at a production studio and who worked with artists such as like Cindy Sherman, Barbara Kruger, Rashid Johnson, producing limited edition collaborations. So that really gave me an insight into working with artists and how to transform their work into like different products and different collaborations, which was really, really valuable knowledge. I got introduced to digital art in 2017, and as Jess mentioned, I co-founded an early generative art gallery in 2018 called ARTXCODE. This was our first show in 2019 in the basement of some building in New York City. yeah, obviously you can see the scale in which the industry was at the time was very, very like low end. But it was really an industry waiting to be discovered. And, we had real conviction and really thought that this was going to be a category that would be huge in the next few years. And we stuck to it, and it really has paid off. But this was our first show. Each of these prints were $750, I think. And now these artists are selling for millions of dollars at major auction houses like Christie's. So it's crazy to think like 5 years ago, this is what it looked like. And now, sort of everything I showed you with $1 million sales, that's what it looks like today. This was, again, our second show that we did, a little bit better, but again, still pretty low end. And these are by artists who are, again, amazing. So I also completed a 6-month software engineering immersive because I was working with artists who knew how to code. I wanted to learn how to at least understand it myself. So I took some time off from my regular job and I got a software engineering immersive. So after that, I got a job at a Web3 agency and worked with brands like HBO, Warner Brothers, and Sony to bring them into NFTs and Web3 and use their sort of IP and marketing to engage audiences using Web3. Then I joined Christie's in 2022. And now my role, of course, I sell art. So I curate auctions. I think of auctions. I think of, I work with sellers who are selling art and sell art privately. I also work on Christie's product strategy for digital art. So how do we sell things from a tech perspective? So this is where my software engineering background comes in. So I'm working with our back end and front end teams to make sure we can, if there's like a new way of selling something in the digital art space that's available, on whatever.com, let's see if is it important if Christie's maybe adopts this as well, and then think that through and then work with the teams to implement that. I'm also a public-facing representative for Christie's. Of course, I'm speaking here today. I speak a lot on panels and at different universities talking about digital art and, educating. And then, of course, working with collectors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. That was so incredibly informative and inspirational. We are honored to have you. It was a great presentation.
Thank you.
Now, who wants a museum internship? Raise your hand. Everybody should be raising your hand. Awesome. So our next speaker is Michael Spalter. We're excited to welcome him here. Michael, as I said, has this incredible collection of early computer art, and I'm going to pull up that on the screen right now. All right, Michael, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Fantastic. I want to kind of hand over the stage to you, but I would like to start where Anne Spalter left off. She had mentioned earlier this week that you had this beautiful origin story about starting to collect these computer-generated artworks, and you compared these computational artists to the Impressionists. And I thought maybe we could start there and have you kind of talk about the origin of your collection and why you started collecting digital art.
Well, first I want to say a heartfelt congratulations to Sebastian, who just gave, I thought, a beautiful presentation. And I'm as excited as I think the people in the audience to have heard you. So thank you, Sebastian. I also want to thank the Castellani Museum and its director and Niagara University for hosting this. I'm asked to speak literally every single day because this ecosystem is so large, and I just don't do it because I find that a lot of the people who are inviting me are speculators, and I don't view collecting art as an investment. And in terms of the history here, in 1986, I was a senior studying art history at Brown University, taking a course on Impressionism, and it was taught by one of the leading scholars of the field, a professor named Kermit Champa. And while studying Impressionism, actually was studying a woman who was in the second row on the left throughout the semester, and that happened to have been Anne Morgan, who I ended up dating and then marrying and having a child with, and have been in many ways life partners. Even though we're no longer together, we share our love and passion for our collection and our beautiful daughter. Anne, who I believe spoke yesterday, really is a polymath. She studied 3 different majors, started at RISD, transferred to Brown, studied studio art mathematics, and then created a 3rd major, which is a combination of literary, visual, and mathematical ways of thinking. And that year that she was writing her honors thesis, the Macintosh computer came out, not to date us, but Anne, a student of 2 teachers, came from a family of rather modest means, took a position at an investment bank, and realized that with the Macintosh, you could create art with the computer. And while she was doing her job on these Excel spreadsheets, she could actually do her art on Mac Paint. And then when her boss would come by, she would just click on the Excel spreadsheet and it would pop up. And they wouldn't know that she was actually doing art all day long on the computer. While Anne was studying the computer and the visual arts, she was invited to teach the first digital art courses at the Rhode Island School of Design and Brown University. And really, I would say, is in the lineage of a woman that we became very dear friends with over the years, who had what I think is going to be a seismic moment in the canon of art history, which is a retrospective at the Pompidou, and her name is Vera Molnar. And if you want to go to some of Vera's works, I'm happy to discuss that. So while Anne was teaching these courses, a oracle, whom you all know from Apple Computer, who now has passed, reached out to Anne and asked Anne if she would consider writing a book on the field of computers and the arts. And how could you resist this man? And she said yes, which became a 6-year journey of immersive study and research, while simultaneously teaching and being the first artist in residence of Brown University's computer science department, which was founded by a gentleman named Andy Van Dam. Andy is the character in the movie Toy Story. It was a homage to Andy, who really is the father of computer graphics. So while Anne was researching all of these artists, given my own interest in the history of Impressionism, I would hear these stories of artists who for years were toiling away in their studios and or gaining access in the earlier years. When I say early years, in the mid to late 60s, they gained access to corporations or even to military establishments, because computers at that time were few and they were humongous. The IBM mainframes were the size of large, corporate rooms. So Anne, while she was sharing these stories, it just light bulb kind of went on, and I said, this movement and some of these people really remind me of the Impressionists, because we were witnessing individuals from different pockets of the world who didn't necessarily know each other. Some did, most did not, and they were using what was apparent to us and now is becoming apparent to the world in what Sebastian just shared, the most powerful art making tool in the history of humanity. And I like to share that I think there have been 3 or 4 universal languages in the history of humanity, and that would be mathematics, music, and the algorithm. So, and then sign language. So that's the 4th, and there may be others, and if you can think of them, I'd love to know. But the idea that this was taking place and that we were able to visit these artists, including Vera and kind of the seminal figures which students of the genre would understand, Manfred Moore and Hiroshi Kawano. We actually got to hang out with these people, and no one was buying their artwork, and no one really gave a crap about their artwork at the time. And that was in and of itself fascinating. And some of the artists, including some of the folks at Bell Labs, we have the very first computer animation ever created in our collection. We have the first computer art work ever created in our collection. And a lot of it was that people were worried about their legacies. And unlike Sebastian throwing around figures of $69 million, these were people who in 10 years didn't make $6,900. And then fast forward today, I'm being offered, which is very upsetting to me, from people in this ecosystem, extraordinary sums for works of art. And it's important to note that Anne and I have never sold an artwork. Anne was the first person invited onto I guess it's a platform, Sebastian would know, this thing called Art Blocks by its founder, to be on the curation board. And Anne has really had a front row seat every step of the way as both a practicing artist, whose work, by the way, was just accepted into the Pompidou, and has experimented with every form of digital, ranging from 1992, realizing with the Macintosh, she could create on her little screen an image, but she could make it any size she wanted. So she decided to rent a billboard on Interstate 95 on the highway. And she took this little image and made it into this, humongous billboard. And she was using augmented reality at the, art fairs in Basel on these huge balloons that she created. And she herself has been really at the forefront of artificial intelligence. So I think that's like the genesis. But what has been apparent, and Sebastian is, beautifully confirming, and I would say that Sebastian's role with Sofia Garcia, because they're both very humble people, and there are a lot of people who are, in my view, very pompous, arrogant assholes in this space. Sebastian and Sofia are 2 of the most humble, but profoundly important individuals in catalyzing the art market part and the recognition. Because when Sebastian was talking about these people, there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of digital artists now, and I have always believed and wrote extensively about this, that when you have a screen, whether it's the tablet that I'm talking on, or those of you who are bored looking at your smartphones right now, or the billions of televisions, digital art will be omnipresent, and it will evolve, in my view, with screen technologies, which have not kept up yet with the actual underlying algorithms and the AI that we're seeing. So I'm going to pause there because I'm throwing out a lot of different thoughts, and see if you want me to go in any direction, or more importantly, for students too.
Well, I want to say, extend a huge thank you to our speakers. Thank you, Sebastian. Thank you, Michael. This has been extremely, again, informative and educational and inspiring. Thank you for taking the time to be here. And we're very excited to continue these conversations through our pilot series.